Well, good evening. It is Saturday night. It is September 11th, and it's kind of been, I spent my, this has nothing to do with my devotional thought for today, but a couple hours ago I spent some time listening to the audio transcripts from 9/11 and listening to the air traffic controllers and trying to figure out what was happening 20 years ago. I remember as night fell that night, it was pretty quiet because there was no. We were in flyover country at the time, upstate New York, but no jets in the sky, and things were very quiet. It was a very somber evening. I had probably, I would have just been arriving home from work. Worked at Radio Shack at the time, and would have been arriving home probably about 8:15 to 8:30. So yeah, a really somber day. Tomorrow is worship. Tomorrow is the proper 19, or the 16th Sunday after Pentecost, and this is the lectionary devotional based on the Revised Common Lectionary, and it is year B. And we find ourselves in Mark's Gospel, something that we have a familiar section of Mark's Gospel, a story that we've heard before. So they were in Caesarea Philippi. Jesus and his disciples were at Caesarea Philippi, and Caesarea Philippi was sort of known for it was known for being a religious place, yes. But a place where it was more of a place for idol worship. It was near this grotto, and was there near this abyss. And to the early to people of that culture, the abyss is where the underworld was, and this particular place at Caesarea Philippi was considered to be an entrance to the underworld. And we're going to see this in just a second. It talks about the gates of hell, and this is a place where this is partially why Jesus uses this phrase, because they were here at this quote unquote entrance to the underworld when he says the gates of hell will not prevail. And so here Jesus is with his disciples at Caesarea Philippi, and here's what happens. Mark chapter 8, verse 27. Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went up to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. As they were walking along, he asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" "Well," they replied, "some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, others say you are one of the prophets." So John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the other prophets. Jesus could be any one of these things. And then Jesus narrows the question down. He points it very well. He says, "But who do you say that I am?" And here Peter speaks up, impetuous Peter, and he says, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. Now we know what the gospel readings from other parts say, and we get into that in some of the other gospel readings. But here, immediately after Jesus warning them not to say anything about it, Jesus immediately jumps to his death, or predicting his death. And he talks about picking up our cross as believers. So verse 31, then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, that the leading priests and the teachers of religious law, he would be killed, but 3 days later he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. So Peter has just really kind of hit this home run with, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Like, "Get away from me, Satan," he said. "You are seeing things merely from a human point of view and not from God's." Yeah. After hitting that big home run with "You are the Messiah," Jesus rebukes Peter and says, "You know what? you still don't get it. You still don't get it. Then he goes on, and then he turns to the crowd and to join his disciples. If any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my message in these adulterous and sinful days, the Son of Man will be ashamed of that person when he returns in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Wow. What would you do if you were there with Peter and the other disciples? Peter and the disciples were thinking that Jesus was bringing a kingdom to this world, that Jesus was coming as a political savior. And they're like, hey, Jesus, you can save us. Jesus says, no. I'm going to die. And if you want to be my follower, yeah, you have to die too. Take up your cross and follow me. The way of the Christ follower isn't always easy. And Jesus says if you want to try to hang on your life, you're gonna lose it. But if you give it away for my sake, you will gain it. Yeah. The old gospel song says, I won't take nothing for my journey now. Over 58 years, it's been quite the journey. 8 years old, I decided to follow Christ, and almost 10 years later, received the call of God on my life to be his servant, to be a minister. And then almost 10 years after that, started working on following that call, 12 years after that. In 2000, we took our first church as far as being a pastor. And it's been full of ups and downs. It's had its good times, it's had its bad times. But for the sake of the call, God has called me first, and then my wife. Actually, she probably received the call back when she was a teenager as well. But the denomination she was in didn't ordain women. We got married, she joined the Wesleyan Church, and sometime 2003, 2004, realized God's call in her life and decided to, and realized that, she should be ordained as well. If you try to hang on your life, you'll lose it, but if you give it up for the sake of the gospel. And Pam and I have done that. And it's, like I said, it's been full with, we've had some difficulty times, but I'm glad I'm serving Christ tonight. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world and gain your soul? I think about leaving that job where I was making pretty good money as a 25, 26-year-old. And God said, were you willing to trust me? Or are you willing to go where I want you to go? And that has led us through places like Marion, Indiana, and Flint, Michigan, and finally here to Millsboro, Delaware. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world but you lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? What are you putting in front of your own soul? Jesus is the Messiah. He came and he calls us to join his work in declaring that he is the Messiah. So I encourage you tonight. What do you gain? Take up your cross. Follow him. What do you gain if you gain the whole world, but you lose your soul? Nothing is worth that. So I encourage you to follow him with everything you've got. Take up your cross and follow him. Go in peace to love and serve.